This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
Well, folks, welcome to the Tilted Table, Episode 1.
Ooh.
I am your co-pilot, Sean Landon Clark.
And I am Joey Joe, a.k.a. the Fraggy Mac.
What's up, brother? How you doing today?
I'm excited, man. This is the Tilted Table has been bouncing around in my head since late 2016.
Wow.
So, partnering up and kind of seeing a dream become reality is pretty exciting.
Right. Yeah, and the whole thing with any kind of podcast is consistency. So as long as we're consistent, we can keep putting out shows.
Preach.
And I'm excited, too. I've done a lot of audio style things. I've messed with podcasts once or twice, but nothing particularly serious. So I'm super excited, too. I think it's going to be a fun little journey. And the first thing that we're going to talk about, and it's actually primarily this whole show is going to end up being about music, is the other night, Joe and I went to a show at one of our local venues. It was a theater, and it was an orchestral reimagining of Dr. Dre's Chronic 2001. And that's pretty much what I know about this group or this band. Joe knows a little bit more about them specifically.
Well, these are actually the first concert tickets I've ever bought myself in my life.
Oh, okay.
And it was in early January over the weekend. Cookie's doom scrolling on Instagram, and this concert just popped into her feed. Mm-hmm. She's like, "Oh, hey, I think we should go to this." And so it's it's probably like a 8-person orchestra.
Yeah, it's not a full-on. I think when you say orchestra, people have this vision of 30, 40 people.
It's more than a chamber orchestra, I guess.
Yeah, like a small group of people.
They had toured all through Europe, and by all through I mean there was like 50 stops on this tour.
Oh, okay.
And then when we saw they were coming to Fresno, California, I'm like, absolutely. And Cookie and I literally got a notepad and said, let's write down all the names of the people that we'd want to go to this with. And I felt like a little kid getting ready for Disneyland last night. So the Tower Theater,
which is a great venue, absolutely amazing. What did you think of the show?
I really, I had watched on Instagram their No Strings Attached handle, I guess is their account.
Okay.
So I watched a bunch of the reels with my headphones to like kind of get what the vibe was going to be in the music.
Uh-huh.
And I was super excited. And when the gentleman first started playing the keyboard, I was like, okay, sounds good in here. The audio quality. And then when the bass kicked in, like I had mentioned, I at first I thought, like, am I having a heart attack? Like it was the reverberations from that bass were so hard that it was like my chest was pounding.
Right.
And then once I knew it was the bass, I'm like, yeah, California love. But I thought they did a great job. An orchestra-backed Dr. Dre Chronic 2001 show. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I dug it. I thought it was cool. When it introed, I was just like, okay. I really dug the whole intro thing. Was amazing. And then when they came out, my first thought was I didn't know what kind of reaction they would get. Because if they're going to we're going to play the entire Chronic 2001 from Dr. Dre. And we're going to, right when it first opened, I said, they're going to do it in linear order. They're going to do it track by track. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking like a lot of people I'm not going to say they're not going to know these songs, but even people that listen to that album, there's a lot of songs on the album they're not going to be jumping up and down for. There's always the
Sure.
big hits. So when they played the first, I think, 2 songs, I think Still Dre, I think is the third. Mm-hmm. It's the third song. I'm thinking I don't think they're going to get much of a reaction until they play the third song. And that's exactly what happened for the most part, mm-hmm. right? It's just like people are just sitting there kind of watching this thing happen. And it's not that I don't think that they wanted to... oh, I don't want to get up and get into it. I just don't know how well any of these people really know those songs. They might know the chorus, but they're not going to necessarily know all the verses. Where when you think about Still Dre or Forgot About Dre or those the classics off that album, I think everyone knows all the verses too. So when they hit those songs, it goes. And I noticed they skipped a few near the end. There's like 3 songs that they jumped over, and then of course they back off the album. They start playing things that aren't even on that album, and some of the bigger hits, which I thought was a smart move. Like in all honesty, you shouldn't do a Chronic 2001. Full on retrospective of that album. You actually probably should just pick Dr. Dre or anything associated with him, and you could play all night long playing nothing but bangers.
Oh, for sure,
and have the whole crowd just going nuts.
Yep.
So
I really liked the Eminem Dido cover that they did.
Yeah,
I thought that was really good. And my favorite though was after they all left the stage and then the crowd's chanting one more song.
Yes.
And they came back out and they said the night wouldn't be complete without California Love.
Of course.
Which is absolutely my jam.
Yeah.
When that song first came out, you're listening to FM radio, and I kind of knew the song cycle, and I would just hang out waiting. My mom would tell me go do chores or whatever, and I would linger until that song came on, listen to it all the way through, and then as soon as it went to commercials, I'd take my headphones off and I go do whatever my chores were. So number one, the song is amazing all the way around, and then to hear a performance like that on that kind of an audio system, I thought was freaking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, all around, I really dug it. My only real complaint about what they did, and this is interesting because something that a friend of mine was there. I didn't know he was there. I saw him out of the corner of my eye, and I had texted him and made a comment like, "You better get on stage and show these clowns how to do it or whatever." And he wrote me back, goes, "Oh, you got the Dre thing?" I said, "Yeah." And he had made a comment, and it kind of reflected, I think, kind of the one thing that expectation meets reality. So when it was presented as like this is orchestral reimagination or whatever they called it of the Dr. Dre 2001 Chronic album, I even said this in line to Love. I said, I don't know if they're going to have somebody actually come out and rap. Like, are they going to do that, or this is just straight instrumental? And because we don't know, and so when we get in and they open with the first track, which I think is Lolo, and I think it's just an intro, right? So that blew me away. I was like, wow, this is going to be, the sound quality was so awesome. And then the second song hits and they bring out a rapper, and so the guy starts rapping, and I think it took away from the orchestral part too much. And it's just like, okay, so I'm not saying, I assume they would have somebody come out and do some kind of vocals. I didn't think it was going to be
cover
like
band
every song, and this guy was going to rap. And I mean, he did a pretty good job because he definitely tried to do things like when it's Dre's verse, he tried to sound like Dre, and then when it was Eminem, he tried to switch over and do the Eminem thing, and it wasn't too bad. But I don't know if it was the mix, maybe it was the way he was rapping. I thought it was too much, and it took away from the orchestral part of it.
It would have been cool if they had done let each of the musicians kind of riff. There was a moment, when the gentleman on the trombone came out. I thought that was really cool. Yeah. But if they would have let each one go off, more for a minute, I think that would have been cool. But that was a great time, man. And
the reason I bring up my friend was because I texted him. He's like, you're at the Dre show. I said, yeah. I said, we're here with a couple friends. He's like, yeah, I left. This is boring. This is just glorified karaoke. And I'm like, ooh, that's kind of harsh, because I wouldn't call it glorified karaoke, but I can see how you could see that. Like,
I could see how you could see that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a great idea to sit there and go, okay, we're going to do an orchestral reimagining of, it could be any album, but rap in particular, I think is an interesting thing to do. When they opened with that first song, I was truly impressed. It sounded great, and it's amazing how music, whether it's rock or hip hop or country, you can transfer this music over in any genre done correctly. It can sound really, really cool. I wish the whole concert, with the exception of I can get it like maybe some of the hits, maybe, because people get up for those songs, but maybe the lesser known songs, I wish they would have done straight instrumental, just straight orchestra. I
don't know if you had checked it out, or if you haven't, I can certainly send it to you, but Metro Boomin had done back in November 2023, did a whole show with, I don't think it was the LA Philharmonic, but a group like that. And it was a whole, his entire catalog of all of the bangers with an orchestra. And it went, Cookies listened to that show, I don't know, 4 times a day, every day for 7 months.
Okay.
And then, which is, you go back even further, I want to say it was like 1997-ish.
Okay.
Metallica performing with the San Francisco Philharmonic, the S&M concert.
Yeah.
Still in my opinion, one of the greatest concerts ever.
Oh, okay.
Watching the violinists and the cellists as they're sweating buckets, they're taking their ties off. You can just see like strings breaking as they're wailing away. That was an amazing concert. Right.
Yeah, it's cool. I remember when that happened. I'd never seen it. I think I've seen clips of it like on YouTube, but it made huge waves. Mm-hmm. There was a large group from the rock and roll crowd that thought this was like blasphemy. Like, oh, Metallica is just really selling out now. That idea. But the clip I saw, I thought it was super cool. But when they first talked about it and it was like, oh, they're going to do this thing, I automatically thought like, oh, this could be really, really good. Like, I can see totally this happening. But also, I grew up on Metallica, and if you really go back to their older stuff, I mean, their songs are like 7-8 minutes long. Mm-hmm. They're complicated, a lot of different parts. It's kind of made for, an orchestra could easily latch on to that style and turn it into something that would sound really amazing.
Do you have a favorite early Metallica album?
Well, so...
Let me classify early. Let's cut it off.
Yeah, the pre-Black album. That's what most people are the pre-Black album.
I would cut it off at Reload.
You cut it off at Reload?
Yep.
You wouldn't cut it off at Load?
No, I cut it off at Reload.
So I, first and foremost, I'd never been that big of a Metallica fan. Like when I was in high school was when Injustice came out, Master of Puppets, and I mean there were people who were in that mindset that like Metallica is the greatest thing that's ever graced this planet. And if you talked bad about them or even suggested that they weren't these gods of rock and roll, gods of heavy metal, you would be beat up. At worst, you'd get your butt kicked. But I was never a super, super big Metallica fan. My taste lied more of the dirty, sleazy hard rock blues, like GNR and things like that. So, but that being said, I love Metallica. I love a lot of thrash music. Slayer, I think, is an amazing band. I like them more than I like Metallica. But if I had to pick a Metallica album, I think is probably, I don't think it ever got any better for them than this, is Master of Puppets.
Agreed. That's fine.
However, the reason I'm choosing Master is I actually think that Injustice for All is a better album overall than Master. The problem with Injustice, and you can find this everywhere on the internet, and it was even talked about when I was in high school, the mix is terrible. You can't hear the bass guitar at all. So the mix is what kills Injustice. And this is what I love about the internet is that there are these dudes out there that remixed the album themselves.
Really?
And turned up the bass. And it sounds fucking amazing. Like
where can you find a remastered album, and you have to go to YouTube?
These are just dudes that probably own studios. They're nobodies. And so
but where can I go to download that?
Well, I mean, if you go to YouTube and type in Injustice for All bass, I'm sure you'll find a video that say like, with the bass turned up or with the bass remixed or whatever. But that's not even the coolest thing I found. I have found a bunch of people online that have redid songs from a lot of bands. But I'll give you an example of one, since we're talking about Metallica. So Megadeth, they're the rival contemporary Megadeth. And as we all know, Dave Mustaine was the original guitar player in Metallica, and he was kicked out, started his own band, and that started a rivalry that's gone on for decades. So Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning, first two Metallica albums, specifically Kill 'Em All, a lot of the songs on Kill 'Em All were written by Dave Mustaine. A lot of them, if not the majority of them, were written by Dave. So when Dave came out with Megadeth, his first album was Killing's My Business and Business is Good, right? It was a low budget album. It was their first album. He did a lot of songs on Killing's My Business with different names and different lyrics, but there was the exact same song as like Mechanics from Metallica. So what these guys are doing is, what would have happened if Dave Mustaine would have stayed in Metallica? So, for example, they would do the song specifically "And Justice for All." What would it sound like if Dave Mustaine was still in the band? And they rewrite the song and they play it differently. It has a lot of Dave Mustaine influence. And whoever's singing this stuff sounds a hell of a lot like James Hetfield. Like they imitate the vocals.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, and it's cool because I sent it to a buddy of mine who's a big Metallica freak, and he wrote me back. He goes, "This is the most amazing thing I've ever heard," because he goes, "This is what I think it actually would have sounded like if Dave Mustaine was never kicked out of the band, and they cut And Justice for All. This is what these songs would sound like." And they would do a number of songs. So stuff like that I think is super cool. There's a bunch of that on the internet. The talent levels on YouTube are just insane, with people thinking about like reimagining something, which goes back to what we're talking about with the Dr. Dre thing.
Right.
There's another guy on YouTube. I don't know his name. I know he's not that hard to find. He'll take classic albums and he'll go song for song, and he'll do it in a different style. So he took Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, and he'll say song "Welcome to the Jungle" if it was done by Motorhead. And right, and it's I might be getting the songs incorrect, like which song he manipulates. I'm going by a very bad memory. So like it would be "Welcome to the Jungle" in Motorhead style. He can imitate Lemmy. Sounds just like Lemmy. Second song, if It's So Easy, if it was done by Nirvana, and it'll sound just like Kurt Cobain, and he'll play it in the style of Nirvana. And one of the songs he did was I think it was Paradise City. He did in the style of Oasis, right? So he goes through the entire album. It's not. It's awesome. It's not the full song. It's usually about like a minute long kind of clip of it. And this dude is. I watch this guy. I'm like, this dude should be more famous than every rock star on the planet right now. This guy can sing anything, any style, and to be able to do all this simply blew my mind. Speaking of
blowing your mind, have you listened to the new Tupac album?
I have not listened. How does he have a new album? Is it AI?
It's a compilation. Somebody, just like you were saying, super creative, technically savvy people out there. Somebody took some unreleased music and AI and sampled off of other albums and compiled the final Tupac album.
Okay.
It came out in November. I've not even kidding you. I probably listened to it 50 times in the last 2 weeks.
Really?
And if I didn't tell you,
I would have not known about
you
this.
would not. Well, you wouldn't even know. You would think, oh, the estate just released something out of the vault.
Maybe. Well, with AI these days, I think my first move would have been like, well, somebody AI'd something.
But it's a stunner. So I'll definitely have to. I'll share that one.
Okay, cool. You have to check that out. Years ago, and this is way before AI, and you can find it on YouTube, there was a guy that he took a number of rap artists, and I think what he was doing was either taking recorded a cappella pieces that may have already existed, or he's taking existing songs and he's stripping out the music and it's just the vocals. And then he would, just cut and paste and put artists together on a brand new track that had never collaborated before. And I'll give you an example. He did one with Eazy-E and Tupac called Payback. You can look up this song, and it sounds legit. It sounds like a studio recording, and it sounds like Tupac is doing a track with Eazy-E. And they never collaborated at all, right? So, yeah, I don't know how I found that. When I first found it, I was blown away by that. Like, wow, really, honestly, you can find them on YouTube. There are straight a cappella tracks. And I don't know if they're a cappella tracks that these guys actually recorded and somehow got leaked because there's no music in the background, or if somebody was able to strip the music out of the background. Typically, when they strip the music out of the background, at least with older equipment, you can remove most of the music, but even at its best, you can slightly hear it. Because it's so quiet and faded in the background, and the vocals are just kind of out there. And I can see how if you took that and you put it over a different beat, it would drown it out. You wouldn't be able to hear it, but it's still there.
Well, speaking of mashing up and remixing, there's a channel on YouTube that Cookie and I are huge fans of. It, and the channel is Kill Mr. DJ, and they will take whoever the artist is. He'll take things that don't sound like they go together at all. It would be like Marilyn Manson, Tupac, and Katy Perry on the same track.
Okay.
And then he'll mash up not just the vocals, but all of the corresponding music videos that go to each of those songs. And then he'll create one singular video with all those artists combined.
Oh, sweet.
It is a rabbit hole and a half to go down. And some of them, the mashed up versions, I actually prefer to the original, which is crazy.
Well, it shows you a lot about the creativity level of these people that are doing this. but also how isolated, the music industry was way before the internet. There's a handful of people saying this is a hit song, and so when that's all and take another way, these are all really great songs. But when it's opened up to the entire world, that anybody with a creative bone in their body can put something together, and then you see these people doing things like this.
Super impressive.
Yeah, it's like, wow, this sounds better than anything they actually ever did. That's a scary thought to think about. Like, well, that guy put that together, and that's, maybe to some to say that could be some of the best work they ever did, and it wasn't produced by top end producers or people who are considered the greatest in the industry. And that's what I do love about the internet. If there's a thing I do like about it, is that what you once thought was something that, only a few people can really do this, that have that level of talent. And you find that, no, there's a lot of people that can do it. And for whatever reason, either they really don't want to do it professionally and never pursue it, or they don't get the opportunity, or for whatever reason, not in the right place at the right time. And I found that with, guitar players. When I was growing up, I really thought that, guitar players like Eddie Van Halen, like, this is something that he can do. And there's a handful of other people that can come close to doing this type of guitar work. But after the internet came out, I'm seeing 12-year-olds light up the fretboard like they're freaking, Steve Vai, and go like, this isn't that uncommon. Like, there are probably always people that could play like this.
Well, and speaking of guitars and rabbit holes on YouTube, it was about a year ago. I'd never heard. Have you heard of The Do?
No. Mm-mm.
So it's this guy who's a guitarist, and I've never been on Omegle. I guess it was this internet channel where you could video chat with other people, but around the world on a random basis. Yeah,
there was something called Chat Roulette that I remember existing. I don't know if it still does, but the one time that I messed with Chat Roulette at a party with a bunch of friends, it was just dudes throwing out their dicks and cameras. It was like the worst of the worst humans.
Apparently, that's what the Do says. Was this Omegle channel was like, but he would be absolutely, and he would never show his face.
I know who you're talking about. I remember that.
Yeah,
he wasn't a guitar. He was a piano player, wasn't he?
He played both.
Yeah,
it was the piano and the guitar, but it would be like, the Omegle channel would be like some dude in Turkey would be smoking a bowl and be like, "Yo, bro, can you play?"
Yeah,
whatever.
He would totally do it.
And then he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I got you." And then he would just jam away. I mean, I don't even know how much time I've spent watching those videos.
Yeah, I stumbled across that guy probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and I was impressed by that. And there was a big internet search for him. I can't remember what I saw, if they found him. I felt like they did. And he just didn't want to be interviewed. He didn't have any interest in doing anything any more than what he was doing online. That's
really interesting.
So
you would think you would monetize that or market it in somehow.
Maybe, but musicians, and being a musician myself, being around a lot of musicians throughout my life, a lot of them are really kooky personalities. A lot of them don't really want that kind of attention necessarily. And even if they do, when they get it, they often don't like it. And this is probably why a lot of the times you see musicians, really famous musicians, act the way they do. The love of the music, or the whatever passion they have to do this. And then I think probably going out seeking some kind of validation for it. And then they become famous. And this is the last thing they want, is the nonstop attention in the crowds and the people. And so you can see a lot of those kinds of, there's even like musicians disappearing and going, they're a recluse. They haven't been seen in, 15 years. Like even like Steve Perry from Journey, he disappeared for, 15, 20 years and just didn't want to do interviews, just wanted to deal with him. He wanted to go back to a normal life. So I can see somebody like that guy. It's pretty safe to be on the internet, cover your face, and go on some random kind of, website where, request a song, and that's as much as he wants. He gets a joy out of that. But the minute people catch on to it, it goes viral. People are knocking on his door. They want interviews. Why aren't you performing? The average person is like, well, if I had your talent, I would be doing all of this stuff, and I'd be the most famous guy on the planet. It's like, well, that may not really what he wants to do. Yeah, so that doesn't really surprise me a whole lot.
Yeah, it's YouTube is a fun, dangerous rabbit hole. I use YouTube Music every day. But I try and stay off the videos unless I'm purposely like, okay, I've got an hour to kill.
Right.
You know, let's go see what kind of fun stuff. And speaking of YouTube audio, have you ever played around with like 4D music or 10D music?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, bro, this is like some next level stuff. You have to wear headphones because a regular sound system, even if you've got some super audiophile level gear, your left-right channels can't mirror the sound distribution in a headset. They basically take it's like standing on a sound stage where the vocalists are running around you like in a circle, and they're bouncing like the bass as it's sweeping from left to right, front to back, like almost across your brain.
Sure, that makes sense when you're talking about 4D or
It's a trip, and they'll usually do it like in super high fidelity. So yeah, I'll send you some cool like 10D tracks.
Yeah, I should check that out.
Cookie will just see me with my eyes closed, like tapping my feet, and she doesn't even see what's on the screen, but she knows it's like some really cool music like that.
Wow, for sure, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
On that note, Megadeth is way better than Metallica ever was.
You know, I'm a big fan of Megadeth's Euthanasia album. The ringtone on my phone for years was To Le Monde.
Okay, yeah.
I really dig that song, and that was a great video too.
See, we're definitely coming from two different schools, because Euthanasia is where I kind of lost a lot of interest in Megadeth. My favorite album from them is Rest in Peace. To me, is as good as they ever got. But again, I'm coming from an old school kind of mindset where it's like those songs, I mean, you're talking 6-7 minute long songs. They're just insane with the guitar work. I guess I'm a guitar player, so I'm going to be more enamored with that. The drum work was just insane. It was just really, really super well written music. And I think beyond that, when you got to Euthanasia, which the songs are fine. I like Euthanasia, but again, it became more of a like verse, chorus, kind of a basic song. And I was like, nah.
Let's see. In that same vein of 80s, 90s metal. Oh, you know who I'm still a big fan. I liked early White Zombie.
What was
Les Exorcisto was.
Yeah, right.
Thunder Kiss 65.
Yeah, when they first came out, I really dug them. That song I didn't like that much, but I don't think it was because I didn't like the song. It's one of the songs that was played just, I think, a bit too much. The opening track on that album, Welcome to Planet Motherfucker, that's a great song. That's a great song.
Astro Creep 2000 got me through junior college. Like I would just, I was doing a lot of math science stuff back then. And I would just sit with that album in my Sony Discman,
right,
on repeat. So
yeah, Astro Creep 2000. Well, and my thoughts about that album in particular, I think, kind of revolve around the fact that the album before that, when we were just talking about it, I came to the title of it, you just said it, I wasn't a super big fan of. When I came out with Astro Creep, my biggest problem with that is it just got a little bit too industrial for me. And so I pulled away from it a little bit. I'm like, nah, it's just not, rock and roll enough. It's just had that industrial sound, which is strange because I've always been a really big fan of Filter, and they have that kind of quasi-industrial sound. Although even I think at their most industrial, I think they still sounded way more kind of heavy than industrial. So,
well, the White Zombie did one of my all-time favorite albums. I bought it when it first came out, and I didn't know anything about the band at all. I bought it because of the cover album, or the album cover was Super Sexy Swingin' Sounds, where it's White Zombie, but they release and produce their own techno version of the album.
Okay.
And they did it again. Rob Zombie did it again on some of his solo project stuff. And I dig that industrial techno kind of mashup, especially when the artist does it themselves.
Right. Yeah, well, I got big with like Nine Inch Nails. And
whatever happened to those guys? I know Trent Reznor's still kicking around, but they just...
Well, I mean, the band itself was always just Trent Reznor. The only only other person that was, I think, really involved with Nine Inch Nails was Richard Patrick, who's the guy who became the Filter. Filter is Richard Patrick. So when they did Pretty Hate Machine, that was Trent Reznor. And I know that Richard Patrick helped a lot. And he was, I think, the bass player or the guitar player. I'm not sure exactly what instrument he played. So he was in the band, and then he left and formed Filter, which, again, it might as well be Nine Inch Nails Part 2 in terms of just one guy, and it doesn't matter who the rest of the musicians are. So Nine Inch Nails still exists as long as Trent Reznor is playing, because I don't think he has nobody else that he writes everything. It's all him. So it might as well just be Trent Reznor.
Are you a Manson fan?
No, can't stand him.
Oh my! What? How are we friends?
Can't stand
Oh my god! I've been a Manson fan since I started downloading his albums when it was Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids. This is like 1994, and that was before MP3s. You had to download them as on Real Audio.
Oh, okay.
And I remember when Beautiful People came out, it just blew my mind. And yeah, I've read his autobiography. I want to say it's the only book that I've read 8 or 9 times. I think it's a fascinating tale. And this is where I guess you'd say the same thing about Michael Jackson, where in my brain, I can separate the art from the person.
Yeah.
That surprises me. You're not into glam rock?
No, I mean, glam rock was what I grew up on. So I think Manson, for me, the biggest problem I had with Manson is, and I'm not going to sit here and say it's kind of an age thing, but by the time Manson came out, I had divorced myself from a lot of music. So he was mid 90s,
94,
yeah. And so at that point, I was still playing in bands, and it may be the idea that the bands that were out, like I was a big Alice in Chains fan, a lot of the grunge stuff I liked, Stone Temple Pilots I really liked a lot. So Manson came out, and I think the biggest problem I had with Manson was not so much his music, although I'm not a big fan of his music. I've never been a big fan of, and I call it the Kiss factor, when you have a lot of costumes and a lot of makeup, which is weird because, if you like glam bands, weren't they wearing a bunch of makeup? But they weren't creating necessarily, characters. Like Manson, to me, being the sort of androgynous, scary, dark, gothic thing. If you look at the glam bands, and even then I didn't like that stuff either. I couldn't stand bands like Poison that look like chicks, but at least bands like that or Motley Crue, they still seem like real people to me. Like Manson had a character that he played, that's sort of dark. I've never been into that, and I think it's because I could never stand Kiss. I thought Kiss to me was one of the biggest musical frauds ever to exist, living and dying off of a lot of smoke, mirrors, makeup, and their songs. Yeah, their songs really aren't that good as far as musicianship goes. None of them are all that great. I think Paul Stanley's a great singer, but that's about it. So it's like you watch a Kiss show, and Ace Frehley starts playing a guitar solo, and all this smoke starts coming out of his guitar, and rockets start shooting out. And I'm like, yeah, that they do that to distract you from the fact that Ace Frehley's a shitty guitar player and can't play, right? So I think I've always been had an aversion to bands that create that kind of thing. And I think I wouldn't even put it past me. My own biases is one of the reasons why I probably never fell in love with White Zombie a whole lot, because I got that sort of feeling from them that. Although I wouldn't put them in the same category as Manson. I don't think they were creating characters. They had a style and they had an image. I just think that things like Manson, with the sort of way that he came out and the way his band came out, it was a little bit too much for me. I'm just not into that whole kind of character and costume kind of thing. I come from more of, again, like the bands that I really loved growing up were bands like Guns N' Roses, Tesla. And you look at these guys, they wore jeans, t-shirts. Like Iron Maiden is one of my all-time favorite bands. They just had music. They didn't have makeup. They didn't do anything crazy. They didn't have any costumes. Although I guess Iron Maiden had Eddie, the mascot. But outside of that, right, it's just straight up guys, guitars, drums, bass, right? I don't need a lot of theatrics. And I think as the theatrics got a little more crazy, or if they get more crazy, I'm not really into that. And so it's kind of why I divorced myself from bands like Kiss. I'm like, not into that. I think Marilyn Manson had the same effect on me. But as far as his music goes, even his music, I wasn't a super big fan of it.
I mean, it surprises me because I'm a huge music person. I do have a 10 terabyte RAID drive, which holds all of my original downloads from starting back when a T1 line was a big thing when you had the internet. But Mechanical Animals, I put that in my top 3 albums ever. For me, I couldn't even tell you how many times I've listened to that.
Okay.
After that, pick your brain on, merging rock, hip hop, electronica. I've always been a big Linkin Park fan.
Linkin Park is a band that when I first heard them, I really honestly thought that they may be the next wave of something that would be considered iconic. Mm-hmm. I love Linkin Park.
Do you have a favorite album?
The second album, I don't know the title of it.
What's the cover art look like?
I think it's the dude like spray painting like a wall maybe in a gas mask. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the name of it. The first one was Hybrid Theory, which is an absolutely fucking great album. The second album I thought was better. I preferred it, but comparing the first and second album to me is like Lamborghinis and McLarens. Like at the point they're both top tier. Right. But I think what sold it for me on the second album was the opening track, "Don't Stay," which I think might be my favorite Linkin Park song. But the way that song comes in, the way it hits, and it's just, if you don't get goosebumps listening to that song, I think you do have a problem. Mm-hmm. And then when that song ends, it goes right into Somewhere I Belong. And it's a perfect transition to a song that is not totally different from Don't Stay, but I mean, it's a perfect transition to a song that's completely different. And it just flows perfectly. Listening to those two songs back to back, if that doesn't, get you, wanting to, stick your fucking fist through a wall, I don't know what will. So I really do like Linkin Park. And I don't know, they have like a lot of electronica or whatever, but to me, I think it's Chester Bennington is absolutely phenomenal singer, great lyricist. But I think this might go back to maybe the core of why I like a band versus another band. Like why maybe I'm not a big fan of, let's say, Marilyn Manson. Their songwriting, I think, is just super superior. Where with Manson, and to be honest, I can't really sit here and say, Marilyn Manson doesn't really have any great songs that I've heard, because I've only heard a handful. I can't say I've actually sat down and listened, at least not closely, to an actual Marilyn Manson album from front to back. So
put that on your to-do list,
right?
Man.
So there's so when I say that, I should be qualifying that, like, I'm not super versed in the music. Have I heard a Marilyn Manson album? I heard the first one back to back, and I remember not being impressed with it. And after that, I've heard dozens of songs from him, but nothing's ever caught me.
Got it.
Right.
Well, for Linkin Park, Into the Light, which I want to say is like is that the final album? Yeah. Because that one came out, I want to say like the week that Chester passed away. Right. And Cookie and I had pre-ordered it. We were driving down to Los Angeles for something, and we listened to it nonstop all the way to LA and all the way coming back. And I think that is a very profound and deep album from a lyric standpoint. And speaking of deep and profound, Mike Shinoda's Fort Minor project, right? That offshoot album was really amazing in storytelling.
I never listened to Fort Minor. I remember hearing one song off of it, so I don't really have anything to say about Shinoda's Fort Minor. I have a friend that's really big Linkin Park fan, and she tells me it's a great album, but I've never listened to it.
It's, I would put that in my top 20 list. How many artists would rap or create songs around the Japanese internment camps in World War II?
Is that what it's? Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's in talking about his grandparents, and it's a really amazing biography of the family. And to put it into that format, I think really special.
Wow, cool. I know nothing about it. Is that why it's called Fort Minor? Is that a place where people were interned?
I have no idea. It's a great question.
I'm drawing conclusions here.
It's a great question. I used to, before all my buddies got married and had kids, a couple of us used to backpack through the Eastern Sierras, and I'd have like one of those little iPod Nanos.
Yeah, I remember those.
And I had like 4 of them, just because you're at 11,000 feet, no electricity. Right. And I would just burn through them, and the only thing I would listen to is Fort Minor as I was walking across the mountains. And yeah, that album's fantastic.
Sweet. I have to check some of this stuff out. Maybe I have to
I
go
got you, man.
I may have to go and revisit some of this stuff.
I have an important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh.
So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for the first episode of the Tilted Table.
Absolutely. I know I'm excited to be on this magic carpet ride.
Yeah, I'm down on this magic carpet ride, too.
I'm Aladdin and you're Jasmine, baby.
Oh, shit. Yeah, baby. All right. For the Tilted Table, I am Sean.
And I am JoJo, a.k.a. the Fracky Mac.
And we're out of here.
Peace.